a lot of moms, they talk inside the Facebook groups and they say, our childbirth class is worth it. Or if they have decided that they want a childbirth class, they ask, what classes do you recommend? I'm going to tell you in a minute why those are two questions you don't want to be asking people in any mom groups, and why you don't want to be following the typical advice that you're going to be getting from that. But first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a story. When I got pregnant, the very first thing I did was go out and get all the pregnancy books, sign up for all of the emails, go on to all of the blogs, and sign up for those childbirth classes. I was excited to sign up for those childbirth classes because I love to learn. And this was an area of which I didn't know very much about. I was a first-time mom, and so I trusted that I would get some valuable information that would help me to have the natural birth that I was envisioning. I had planned a home birth. I decided that I didn't want very much pain or intervention. I didn't want to be in the hospital. And so I really went in with this idea of, I'm going to learn these techniques, I'm going to learn breathing techniques, and I'm going to be able to get my natural birth. And I'm going to be doing it at home. So it's even better. I was really excited about this. Now, here's the thing, flash forward to the graduation, when all of the other moms inside of this childbirth class that I took, they had their babies. Out of all of these moms, which there were 20 of us, 2 had natural births, technically. 2 had births in which they had a vaginal birth. And I was the only one who had a completely unmedicated birth with 0 intervention. The other mom that attempted to have a natural birth ended up getting the epidural after she got induced, and then she had her baby pulled out with forceps and vacuum. So she had attempted to have this natural birth. She tried to hold out for as long as possible while being induced. And she said the contractions got so bad that I had to give in and get the epidural. And I don't regret it because birth doesn't go to plan. The other moms, some of them were induced and they had horrible, painful labors that ended in a C-section. Some were told that they were having 2 big babies, and so they chose to have a C-section. Some were going into labor on their own, but it was stop and start. And after a while, the doctor just said, this baby's not coming out, and it was a C-section. One mom, she was told her baby was breech, so it was an automatic planned C-section. So out of 20 students who all had come in at the beginning of their pregnancy saying, I'm going to have a natural birth, and doing all of the breathing techniques and learning all of the information about labor stages and about what to expect, 2 had a vaginal birth, and I was the only one that had a physiological natural birth. Albeit there was still some birth trauma because I wasn't where I wanted to be. I had gotten tricked out of having my home birth. Now, I'm going to tell you more about that another time, because if you haven't been following me for a while and you don't know my story, then I'm just going to tell you, my name is Carly Bondard. I'm a childbirth educator, I'm a doula, and I'm a birth empowerment coach. And I spent 10 years in the birth community. And it started on my journey after my birth of my son, when I realized that I'd been tricked out of my home birth, that I'd been able to have him at home all along. And I'm like, what is going on? Why didn't this work? I took all of the classes, I did all of the things. Why didn't this work? And that's when I came to the conclusion that not all childbirth classes are going to help you have a natural birth, especially if you are planning to have a natural birth without any interventions, without anybody touching you, without anybody disturbing you. If you are basically committed to having a natural birth, as natural as possible, to be able to experience the power of your own body, even giving birth at home or unassisted in the hospital, then this is absolutely for you. This is what you want to be following, because all that advice out there about taking natural childbirth classes, it's geared towards moms who are not choosing to have the completely natural birth, or they are not aware that that is even an option. Those classes are technically geared to moms who are going to follow the medical model. You're not doing that. You don't want the medical model. You don't want to have vaginal exams. You don't want the IV. You've heard that there's a lot of pressure in the medical system. Maybe you even experienced it yourself in your own birth. If you're still a first-time mom and you're going into this and you're really scared and nervous because you really don't want anybody to touch you, which is where I was at, then you really need to know this, that there are mistakes that are being made when it comes to planning a natural birth and choosing the childbirth classes. Childbirth classes, don't get me wrong, they are great. They're a very helpful resource of information. One of my 5 pillars of empowerment is all about getting the right education. So I'm not knocking education. You do need it. However, that is not all you need. And unfortunately, this is the narrative that gets pushed a lot in mainstream childbirth, is that if you go and follow what your doctor tells you, if you follow what your midwife tells you, if you read the right book, if you go to the right class, that will automatically get you the right birth experience. And it's not just that. You need 5 things. You need the right mindset, you need the right education, which we're talking about today, you need the right environment, you need the right facilitators, and you need the right support. When you have all 5 of these optimized, that is when you can have your full empowered birth. It's your roadmap. And I also talked about this before, about creating your empowered birth plan roadmap. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end of this video. So if you watch this, here's what you're going to avoid. You're going to avoid wasting a lot of money and time and resources on classes, books, or courses that you have just been able to go through as just automated. You're going to be able to avoid wasting that time on things that don't work, basically. You're also going to avoid falling into those natural birth traps that I keep mentioning, and I will continue to mention, because there's so many of them. They undermine your confidence. You're going to avoid choosing a class that's going to teach you the information that's going to undermine your confidence. You're going to avoid a C-section that you could otherwise prevent. You're not going to fall into that trap of moms where all 19 of them ended up having a medicalized birth and I didn't. You're going to be that one person, like I was, who managed to break that and be like, no, that's not happening. By following what I'm teaching today, you're going to be able to take the exact same thing that I did to make sure that I didn't end up with that C-section. I didn't end up with an induction. I didn't end up tricked by the medical system. I did get a little bit tricked, but I've now since learned how not to get tricked. And then I can give you that information as well. If you follow me on social media, or if you continue to follow me in the e-newsletter that I put out every single week, or you connect with me directly, what you're going to get is my 10 years of expertise that I have on planning and getting the birth you want without having to fight, beg, or compromise. In fact, I've taught this system to other moms, my clients, my friends, family members, anyone who wants to have a natural birth as natural as possible, and they don't want to get tricked by the medical system, either the first time or again. This is what I teach them. And this is something that's not out there. I had to go and look for it piece by piece, put it together, create my own theories, and build this from scratch. When I first sat down to write my book, Your Empowered Birth, a couple of years ago, back in 2020, it was because I wanted to create that roadmap, because I knew that that book needed to be out there. Anyway, let's get into those 3 mistakes that you are making. Number 1, I kind of touched on a little bit already, and that's the idea that information and knowledge is your only power. Like, that is the power that's going to help you to get the birth that you want. Now, I did say that this is a very powerful piece. It is part of my 5 pillars of empowerment. It's the right education. However, what happens typically in a lot of childbirth education and classes is that you're just bombarded with information. There's just so much out there, and a lot of it contradicts each other. So you may have read in Ina May Gaskin's Guide to Childbirth that membrane sweeps are a problem and that they can cause infections and that you don't want them. But then you go out into a mom group or you take a childbirth class that talks about membrane sweeps as a good way to induce labor. So which information do you listen to? Or maybe you have gone out there and you are trying to pour through information on VBAC or on induction, and you're trying to figure out what to listen to. There's one thing on induction that says that if you go past 41 weeks, the rate of stillbirth doubles, and that's scary. But then you don't know where to find the actual information that gives you the breakdown of the numbers. So you're under the impression that induction needs to happen after a certain point, and you're going into that blind because you don't have that right information. Now, the other problem, of course, with information, as I said, is that it's not going to be all that you need. Because when you are bombarded with information and there's just so much coming at you and you're trying to cram years and years of birth experience into a 9-month period, especially if you're already pregnant, this can be quite daunting. For myself, I took 2 years of deep research and reading and learning and immersing myself in the birth community and talking to doulas and midwives and nurses and hearing what was going on in the actual system and becoming a birth advocate before I even dared get pregnant again with my daughter. And by that point, I had my roadmap and I was able to basically identify the traps. However, I still almost fell into them. Because the thing is that if you don't have that, if you don't have all 5 pillars, if you don't have your mindset completely figured out and you haven't addressed your fears like I didn't do, then what happens is that things start to fall apart and they unravel and you start to panic. And then that's when things don't work. So yes, information is great and it's not all you need. So if you are just picking a childbirth class, or there's most of the childbirth classes and all they're giving is information, or you're picking up a book and all they're giving you is information, you don't know what information is going to help you and what's going to actually undermine your confidence. You don't know how to curate that information. What you need to be able to do is to be able to think critically about everything, ask where it's coming from, what's the cultural context, what's the social context, what's the historical context of it, where did this information first originate from? How true is it in every single situation? Jenny herself read Ina May Gaskin's Guide to Childbirth. This is a very good guide for physiological birth. I highly recommend it. However, Jenny also had chronic conditions, she had complications, and she was choosing induction. When you choose an interventive style of birth, you are no longer having a physiological birth. So everything that Jenny learned about natural childbirth did not help her because that's not what her birth experience was. She was being induced. She also didn't have the context of the medical system. She didn't have the historical context. She didn't have the cultural context. She didn't have the social dynamics. She didn't understand what was going on in our health authority. So she wasn't able to ask those questions. All she could see was that she was being labeled high risk. She was told she had to induce. She wasn't even told why. It was just, you're high risk, you have high blood pressure, so we're going to induce you to avoid preeclampsia. And she just followed along with it because she didn't have the information that she gathered later on once she did have that roadmap. Which, of course, part of it when I was teaching her was giving her the book Why Induction Matters by Rachel Reed. This is another one. If you are thinking of induction or you're just curious about it, go and check out that book. But again, you also need to read everything through a cultural and societal and social lens and historical. This is why I also talk a lot about what the historical context is for a lot of these interventions, why I talk about the social dynamics, why I talk about what is seen in our culture as women and what we're viewed to be as bad mothers if we don't do what we're told. And I really focus on that because you need to understand where your doctor is coming from. So as I said, information does not work. The second one that is a big problem in a lot of childbirth classes is you're picking the wrong childbirth class. So a lot of moms, when they are looking for childbirth classes, they are technically looking for what's affordable, what's going to work for my time commitment, and what's going to teach me what I need to know. What's the most that I'm going to need to know? And some of them just go, hey, what do you recommend? And it goes into the mom groups. And over again, these moms are just dropping links to different childbirth classes. And then you're just going in blind. You don't know what you're actually looking for. You're just, all childbirth classes are the same, right? No, they're not. In fact, do not take a hospital birth class. I don't care if it's free. I don't care if it's offered through your medical care provider. I don't care if it comes highly recommended by your care provider. You do not want to take that class. Here is why you do not want to take that class. That is the kind of class that I took. I took a class that was sponsored by the health unit, that they gave a discount to low-income families. My mother paid the rest of it for me, and it was taught by a registered nurse who was at the local hospital. Was I giving birth at the hospital? No, I wasn't planning to give birth at the hospital. Fortunately, I also had midwives, and the midwife group that I was with happened to offer free prenatal classes for their clients. This class covered physiological birth and interventions, but it still wasn't enough. It was only 4 classes. It was 4 lessons. It gave extra supplemental information, but it still did not fully prepare me enough to know just how bad the medical system was. Because it was taught by midwives, and it was within the practice, they couldn't say everything. They probably wanted to say as much as possible that they could get away with. So they said things like, don't go to the hospital until the very last minute, or the hospital will do things to you. They also said things like, you know, technically we're not supposed to allow you to birth in the tub, but like if you want to try and you're really close to pushing, don't tell us and just try to do it. Like they were really trying to get us to read between the lines. They were telling us things like, you know, when you get to the hospital, they're going to want this. They're going to expect this. This is how you can basically navigate this. But again, because they were in the medical system, they had a ball gag, basically. They were not able to say everything. Doulas, however, can say a little bit more. Not all of them do. Not all of them are completely aware. There are some doulas out there that haven't had enough experience within the local medical system or that local hospital, that they're still wide-eyed and excited to teach birth, and they then eventually get disillusioned and they realize what's going on. This has happened to a lot of friends of mine, where there was a joke for a very long time that's not actually funny, but that the burnout rate of a doula is between 3 and 7 years, depending on if they're attending a home birth or attending hospital birth. Most doulas that truly believe in physiological birth and your ability to birth your baby and to not have interventions, they get burned out. They get so traumatized. Even if you think that you had an ideal birth scenario, they can see things where you were having bits of your power chipped away at that they know is going to come up later as you process your birth and really start to get into it and recognize that that doesn't sit well. This is how my midwife knew before I did that I had birth trauma from my birth, because she kept asking me how I felt about my birth. And I was like, well, it's awesome. I mean, I got my baby out. I didn't have any interventions. But then the more I thought about it, the more it bothered me, because I realized I could have had him at home. I didn't have to be pestered. I didn't have to be told when to push. I didn't have to get on that bed. If I had known that I could stay home, I would have. If I had known that his ultrasound was actually fine and that he was growing properly and was going to be almost 8 pounds, it would not have happened the way it did. Now, I also know that this is my path. I needed to do this. I needed to see that. I needed to have my eyes open so that I could teach you, so that I could come forward and tell you what's going on, So here's the thing about taking the wrong childbirth classes is if you're only focusing on hypnobirthing and you're not also looking at other things that you need to focus on, or you're only taking a class on natural birth and you're not also getting support to be able to ask your questions, it could end up that if you don't have any idea of getting any more supplemental education to that, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. In fact, if you have had a traumatic experience and you take a childbirth class from somebody who has never had a traumatic experience and thinks that birth should just work and hasn't even set foot in the hospital, doesn't even know what is going on in the hospital environment, it doesn't matter how many breathing techniques they teach you. It doesn't matter how many hypnobirthing meditations they teach you. It doesn't even matter how many yoga practices you do or exercising or what you eat. If you are walking into the medical system, there is going to be a point where you're going to likely fall into a trap unless you have that supplemental education, unless you know what's going on, unless you can find somebody. This is why I also say if you're going to hire a doula, make sure that the doula is understanding of what's going on in that system and is willing to speak out. So you can take an online childbirth class with no support, absolutely, for just the physiological childbirth. In fact, I know some people who teach some really good physiological childbirth classes. They're really easy courses. You can go through them. I myself also teach this, though not at a deepest level. If you're in the Lower Mainland and you want in-person, I know a really great group that does in-person childbirth classes. They're one of my favorites to recommend as well. I basically stay in connection with the moms in the network and the doulas in the network, the childbirth educators, those who I know are going to stand for your desire to have a completely physiological natural birth and are going to teach you the right things. So if you're ever in doubt, come to me first before you go and purchase something else, because I will make sure that you're not wasting your time, wasting your money, and getting something that's not going to work for you. I am committed to doing that for you. And if you're looking for something that you really want to get supplemental education around, like say you want to learn about placental encapsulation, or you want to know more about breastfeeding, or you want to know more about mother roasting, or belly binding, or any of the cultural practices that they have in the Eastern cultures that are not really prevalent over here, but have been shown to work very well, then I have moms and doulas and childbirth educators who are able to show you that as well. I bring in experts quite often in these topics because I myself don't have all of the knowledge on that. My goal is to get you to be able to get the birth you want. I can see the traps in the medical system. I can tell you what you're going to fall into a trap. I can help you with your birth plan. I can give you the information on physiological birth because that is my jam. However, I am not a one size fits all. And typically I like to coach. That's my specialty. I love to teach and I love to coach. I focus on helping you communicate with your partner better, getting your care provider on board, planning your birth in a way so you don't fall into any traps, and so that you can actually hire a doula and know that you're hiring the right one. You can pick another childbirth class and you can get the right one. And you can also supplement with the information that I give you as well. So what's the last big mistake, though, that a lot of moms make in choosing a childbirth class? This is the biggest one. If you take anything else away from this class today, make sure it's this one thing. Waiting until the end of your pregnancy to start taking classes or getting information. I cannot even tell you how many times it just causes my heart to sink into my stomach when I see moms in the mom groups that say, I am 28 weeks, I am 39 weeks, I am 37 weeks, and my baby is coming, and I need to now take a childbirth class quickly because I'm panicking and I need to get past all this fear. The thing is, you cannot do that. You really can't, because what happens is that you end up just picking any childbirth class. You make those mistakes, or you end up picking the wrong class, or you end up wasting a lot of time that you really don't have. You're stressing yourself out. You're overloading yourself with information. And the last trimester, particularly the last 2 months, what I do with my clients is I tell them to rest. In fact, I even tell them that we're going to take a step back from longer sessions, and that if they need me, we'll do a quick little laser coaching call of 15 minutes, or they can even just send me a message. And then I just chat with them through Messenger or through WhatsApp. Because the fact is that their focus needs to be on connecting with their baby, and it needs to be on taking that step back to rest. If you are trying to do all of the things at the end of your pregnancy, you're not resting, your body then takes it as, we're not in our cave, there's a tiger in the area, labor's not going to start. And then you go overdue, and then your care provider says that you're not showing signs of any progress anytime soon, and then they start putting pressure on you to induce because the medical system is afraid. And you haven't had that time, you haven't had that practice to get through your fears. You haven't had the practice of coming up to your care provider and saying, thank you, but no, thank you, I'm not going to be doing that. You haven't had that practice early on, so that when it comes to the actual pushing that they do at the very end of pregnancy, because they all will do it, there's very few that won't, because it's not just about their fears. Also, there's insurance companies. Even if it's not through your insurance, they have to carry insurance as a care provider. Midwives end up having to pay more insurance than doctors do, which is ridiculous when you think about it, because midwives are the protectors of physiological birth, and there's less complications with midwives. However, because of the bias in our system, that's what they have to do. They have to carry higher insurance. So because they have higher insurance premiums and their insurance company is putting pressure on them, not only that, but also the medical boards and the OBs who are in charge of everything, midwives who would really rather just let you do your thing and leave you to it, and would definitely want to attend your birth, even if it was at 43 weeks, can't. And you don't know how to read between the lines and find the loopholes to get it so they can support you. Because again, you're afraid and you haven't worked through what you needed to do, and you don't know what you don't know. So again, one of my favorite books that helps go into some of the historical context as well as physiological birth is Rachel Reed's book, Reclaiming Childbirth as a Rite of Passage. It's a very, very thick copy though, but it's got a lot of information. However, the best way is to just follow somebody who knows this stuff and who can help you. And that is why I have my Empowered Birth newsletter that I send out every single week. You can also hit reply to any email that I send out and connect with me directly. You can also email me at carly@empoweringmomsbirth.com. I will get back to you within a day or two, sometimes even less time than that. If I'm already on my email and I see a message and it's urgent from you, I am going to help you, because I don't want you to fall into those traps. I am here to serve you and make sure that you get the birth you want without having to fight, beg, compromise. No uphill battles, no giving up, no giving in, no crumbling under the pressure, no getting tricked out of your dream birth, no getting robbed of your birth experience. Because the truth is that birth can be a beautiful, healing, transformative, powerful act. It can be the most amazing experience of your life, where you not only get to birth your baby and feel the power in your own body, but you also transform every other aspect of your life, and you step into motherhood with such confidence that you don't actually need to rely on experts to tell you what to do. You can be in tune with your baby, in tune with your family, in tune with your personal needs, and create a life that actually works for you. No matter what anybody else says. You're only on this planet for a certain number of years. You don't know when you're going to be leaving that planet. And you want to be able to have the most extraordinary life. You owe that not just to yourself, but to your children, because your children are going to see you stepping into your power. They're going to see from you, you're going to model for them what life can be like. And I know you want the most extraordinary life for your kids. You want that for them. So for your daughter, it will be inspiring for her if she sees you stepping into your full power and basically creating your life that you love, so that she never feels that she has to settle for anything and she never has to go through birth trauma. And for your son too, he gets to see the power of true woman power and be able to respect you as his mother. And also he'll respect his partner in the future, and he'll respect his children, and he'll be able to be that strong male role model that we desperately need. And he will be able to create a more equal society where there's no more pay gaps, where there's no more of that mental load that we carry as moms, where he is going to be the one that steps in, even as a child, sees that there's something that needs to be done and just does it. Wouldn't it be nice if in like 10, 15 years from now, if you're having a son, that he just automatically says to you, hey, Mom, I noticed the bathroom needed to be clean. And I know you said you were going to get around to it after you were finished with work and stuff, but I already did it for you. And then you just look at him and you're like, oh my God, like you just cleaned the bathroom? Like I don't have to do it? Really? Like I was going to have to hire somebody to do this for me because I just don't have time right now with what I'm doing. But you just did that for me. That is high value. Believe me, it's actually possible. My 10-year-old son has cleaned my bathroom for me, basically because of the fact that I've stood in my power. I had this empowered birth experience and I was able to do that. So there's a few ways that you can get on my email newsletter list to subscribe. All you have to do, the easiest way, go to empoweringmomsbirth.com, scroll down. There's a little form where you just put your name and your email in, and you will get a free gift from me. Right now, currently, it is a new mom pack, which is technically for anyone who is planning a natural birth. If you're planning a natural birth, either for the first time or it just didn't go the way you wanted the last time and you want differently, then you're going to get 20 things that you want to avoid when planning a natural birth, which I call my natural birth traps. It's my list of 20 traps. So you'll be able to have that as a PDF guide that you can refer to anytime you need to. You're also going to get 26 things that you need to know before you hit 26 weeks. These are the things that a lot of people leave until the last minute, and then they're trying to cram it all in the third trimester. I don't want you to do that. What I want you to do is take the first 2 trimesters as your planning stage and warming up to communicating with your care provider, communicating your wishes with your partner, and basically having your birth plan ironed out and everything that you need to have your natural birth already done, figured out, so that by the time you hit the last trimester, where you are absolutely exhausted because you're growing a baby and the baby is getting bigger, and this is just what happens in the last trimester, is that your body says it's time to rest now. So instead of trying to do all the things and having all the pain from trying to walk everywhere and do all these exercises and go to all of these classes, you'll be able to just take a step back, relax, go inward, do what makes you feel good, take naps, eat as much as you feel you need to without having that looming deadline over your head. You can just be like, okay, my baby will be coming anywhere from today to maybe 2 weeks from now. And I'm just going to chill out. And I'm just going to binge watch on my favorite shows, or I'm going to catch up on my reading. I'm just going to relax. I'm going to enjoy this time, and I'm not going to worry. And if I go to a care provider appointment and they try to put pressure on me, I'm going to be okay. I'm not going to feel that pressure. I'm going to recognize what's on them versus what's true for me. And I'm just not going to give it much thought. I'm just going to keep going until I feel that I need to change something. And until that point, I'm committed to my dream birth. This is how Jenny got it. This is how Jenny went from having a traumatic C-section with her first baby to having a completely unassisted hospital birth with her second. She did it by following what I teach inside of these weekly newsletters. She did it by following the systems that I taught her. She did it by following a lot of what I teach every single week inside the Facebook group and on YouTube. So what I'm saying here is that if you're going to take the childbirth education classes, which you can, here's what you really want to look for, okay? You want to look for someone who is knowledgeable about your local area, okay? If that is impossible, if there are no childbirth classes in your area, because this sometimes happens, or there's only the hospital classes, no independent childbirth classes, then what you want to do is find a doula in that area who knows the system, who can tell you, even if you don't hire her, so that they can give you some information. You can also check local mom groups and find out what the actual story is about the hospital, but be careful there too. Because what you really want to know is what that experience is like for someone who's committed to having a completely natural birth, as natural as possible. Not someone who went into the hospital, said, oh yeah, they were great, they did my epidural and I ended up with a C-section, but you know, that's how things go, but they were really, really nice. No, wrong story. Same thing for childbirth classes. Oh yeah, the childbirth class was really good. The nurse was very knowledgeable. I had a C-section, but you know, things happen. And I was really prepared by what they said, what to expect, and I'm happy with it. Again, no. You also do not want to go with the childbirth class that only focuses on natural birth, but completely ignores the fact that you might end up with pushback from the medical system, or that there might be a possibility that you choose to go to the hospital at some point or as your backup. Because a lot of classes is like natural birth or bust. And then what happens is if you develop a complication or you think about your backup plan, you're like, what if I have to transfer? If I have to transfer, my entire birth plan goes out the window. If I have to transfer, then they're going to just do things to me and I don't have any preparation for this because I only have natural birth as my blueprint. This is also where Jenny fell into a lot of traps. And this is where I almost fell into quite a few traps, except that I'm good and stubborn. So again, if you're looking for a good childbirth class, you want one that's very well-rounded. You also want one that's going to fit into your schedule. Some of them, if they're in person, it can be really frustrating for you to have to keep going to those classes if you're tired, especially if they only offer them at the very end of pregnancy, which a lot of them do. A lot of them say you can enroll at 28 weeks. This can be really helpful if you've also had supplemental education. It is detrimental if that is the only class that you're taking. All right, so I have so much more on this, on how to choose a childbirth class. In fact, I do actually have a resource on that. So what you can do is you can go to my website, empoweringmomsbirth.com/book or empoweringmomsbirth.com, get on the email list, send me a message, whatever you want to do, and I can give you the resource that I have on how to choose a childbirth class and what you need to focus on, including how to choose the right environment. I have a whole list of things that I basically give out. So even if I don't have the particular resource on my website, chances are if you send me a message and ask me about it, I do actually have something. It's just that I am a constant creator. So I have to take things off my website in order to make room for other things. Wix will only give me a certain number of pages before they say, hey, you know, like you have a lot of pages here and like I can't believe the amount of content that you have on these pages. And I like to make things simple. I don't want to just throw a whole bunch of stuff at you. So if you send me a message at carly@empoweringmomsbirth.com or just get onto my email newsletter and then just hit reply to any one of my emails, what that allows me to do is to connect with you directly, find out exactly what you need, and then give that to you. So no more information overwhelm. I said before, I'm committed to you having an empowered natural birth. You deserve it. You don't deserve to be robbed of your birth experience. You don't deserve to feel like your body is broken and defective when in truth, The thing is that the medical system fails you. And I don't want that for you. I want you to have it because I have experienced what birth can be. And I've experienced what it's like when birth is controlled. And I know the difference, and I've seen it in my clients, and I've seen their transformation after getting their empowered birth, after having previous trauma. And I just know what's on the other side for you. So again, all you have to do, go into empoweringmomsbirth.com, check out my website, go put your name and email in, sign up for the newsletter, and I will see you soon. Bye.